I don't know about you, but I am forever looking for ways to stretch my grocery/food budget. How about you? I think so. Let's talk about this back in a minute. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Jan. Welcome to another episode of my channel, Save Money More with Jan channel. How you doing today? Hope everyone is doing well. As always, you know something. One of the things that we have great flexibility with, and I mean great flexibility with, is our grocery budget. Isn't that a nice thing? That is a great option. But there are ways, and there are ways that we could slow down recipes to stretch our grocery budget. Jan, what are you talking about? Well, I figured out a few things. And I said, I need to share this. I need to share this with the folks for sure and for true. Number one, not to use eggs, which are expensive at the moment of this recording. Sometimes they're cheaper, sometimes they're more expensive. At this moment in time, they are expensive. Hopefully, that will change again and go down to less expensive. There was a time in life that eggs were like the absolutely dirtiest, cheapest thing to buy. But that is no longer necessarily the case, although I still agree they are still rather good value, even with the prices that are increased. But if we could slow down our recipes to stretch our grocery budget, why not? One such option would be to find ways to not have to use eggs in every single recipe as an ingredient. Do you know that there are some cake recipes out there that do not require eggs? Because usually eggs are used as a rising agent, part of a rising agent in a recipe such as a cake. Also, I believe to increase the moisture. That's my guess. But definitely it helps in terms of rising. So if we could find eggless recipes, which we can find, click, 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 tap, 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 a little research and a couple of minutes of effort. And you got to save those eggs for actual like meals, like let's say scrambled eggs. Sometimes breakfast for dinner is a wonderful option. However, if we're using all those hidden eggs in hidden recipes, we don't usually have as much of an opportunity to take advantage of that breakfast for dinner option. Does that make sense? I know it makes sense. So finding ways to not have to use hidden eggs in recipes is one definite example of slowing down our recipes to stretch our grocery budget. All right. Now, flash frozen vegetables. Let me tell you something. They are a gift. In my opinion, they are the next best thing to fresh. In fact, in my opinion, a little bit better. I say that because there's no way you're going to be able to waste frozen vegetables because you're going to we use them as needed as opposed to, oh, hurry up and use the fresh one. Now, if you know for sure and with absolute certainty, and you got a great price on your fresh produce, hey, of course, go for that. But for many people, the frozen vegetable route, in addition to a few fresh vegetables, obviously, like it's so inexpensive to this day to get a bunch of potatoes, okay? Fresh potatoes. Why not go for it? Definitely. If you could. Why not? But to have this as an option is a wonderful option to slow down our recipes, not to mention to slow down food waste, which is a huge, horrendous no. Food waste is one of the worst, absolutely terrible, terrible thing. What some people consider a waste, some people consider their Thanksgiving dinner, and I am not even kidding you, even in 2025. I'm just saying. So, use of flash frozen vegetables is a wonderful option. Buy the ones you use, buy the ones you like. Don't buy the ones that are just on sale because, well, they're just on sale. They could be on sale, but if you don't like them or don't eat them, your family could care less about them, then it's a waste of money. That is not a bargain. All right. Another neat trick. Now, I like to do this, and I thought I personally invented it. Not true. I go to find out that a few people that I know in my life do this as well. Okay, so when I get ground beef, okay, what I personally like to do Instead of making hamburger patties or ground turkey patties, what I like to do is just brown up the ground beef as it is with seasonings and fresh onion, whatever you want to throw in there. I make sure I drain out as much fat, grease as possible. I try not to buy anything greasy anyway, but that's just the way I do it. Everybody's different. But that seasoned up ground browned meat, okay? I like to ladle that onto like a hamburger roll and melt some cheese over it and perhaps toast the whole thing in the oven for about 5 minutes. Yum, yum. Well, Janet, how is that a savings? I'll tell you how. Because you can totally stretch out that loose ground beef, ladling it to your control and your heart's content, as opposed to a thick, chunky burger. You see where I'm going with this? You could practically double the value of your beef. For example, if I buy one of those traditional, I call them blocks, traditional blocks of beef, for example, the kind that's in about the $6, $7 range. It depends where you live, of course. I know that I could get 4 quarter-pound meals out of that. That is actually not bad, because even if that beef cost me $6, 4 into 6, you see where I'm going with that? So I'm getting a lot of bang for my money. So by that neat little trick of stretching it out, just making your burgers with loose ground beef instead of a dense patty can make you really stretch your meals even much, much further. So that's the reason. All right, because you're more in control of the portion. All right. And of course, you could add your favorite shredded cheese to it and whatever else, lettuce, tomato, whatever you like, a little ketchup. Make it to your liking and to your customization. All right. All right. This is a valuable little thing, and it comes in the form of powder. What are you talking about? Chicken or beef bouillon powder. They even have vegetable one too. There's even a tomato one too, by the way, just in case for those that maybe are not aware of that. Chicken, beef, or beef bouillon powder is such a wonderful option. It is an amazing pantry staple, and it can be used for base recipes. For example, including when you make your own homemade gravy. We tend to, out of habit, grab the packet, grab the packet, grab the packet of the gravy, blah, blah, blah. It is so easy to do this. We can make our own homemade gravies. We could flavor up our soups and stews so they don't taste boring on the cheap. And you really do get a good stretch, a good bang for your spending dollar by purchasing when it's on sale, especially. If you could get the powdery form, you're in more control. Suppose you only want a half a teaspoon. Let's say you live alone, you're making a smaller amount. You only want a half a teaspoon of the bouillon powder. That's great. I find it just as good. I don't have to go out and buy boxes and boxes of the broth. There's nothing wrong with it, but I find that the broth boxes tend to cost more, take up more space. I could just easily use my bouillon powder. If you don't have that, you could buy the smaller increments. You could get the little blocks, those little cubes, bouillon cubes. Try to get that. Maybe you could get the store brand at a great price. Take a look into it. It is really important to have flavor in your foods, especially if you're a lower income person and you want to like wake up the taste out of the existing foods that you have, and you don't have too many spices or seasonings available. These basic seasonings can make such an incredible difference in how we perceive our meals. And I do believe, honestly, that it helps in slowing down the recipes that ultimately stretch our grocery budget. So the next thing we could do is to learn simple ways to stretch our existing homemade soups or stews, of course, by adding, let's say, either rice, pasta, or even homemade dumplings. Now, that should be a fun event to do, adding the homemade dumplings. Learn how to do that. It's very simple. You could even use canned biscuit, the doughs, the dough that you get at the grocery store in the refrigerator section. You could buy a can of those. You could get the store brand. You could cut them up strategically into smaller pieces, and you could use that as your dumpling instead of making a dumpling from scratch, if that's something that maybe intimidates you in some way, shape, manner, or form, which it really shouldn't, because it's actually quite easy. By the way, speaking of soup, let's say that you made a beautiful homemade soup and you got a few days out of it, but you want to get even more out of it. You may even want to freeze it eventually that you're making so much more. Using that extra bouillon powder and adding some more water is one definite way to stretch the soup, the leftover soup or stew. You could add small cans of your favorite sliced vegetables, like sliced carrots or a drained can of peas or whatever it is, or go to that frozen vegetables that you have up in your freezer. Take another handful of those, throw it in your soup, and add some more of those dumplings. You may actually add another night or two if you want. You could certainly freeze up that additional soup that you had made from the original soup. And guess what? You are ahead of the game.